And welcome back to another segment of Christopher's Kitchen. Joining us as always is Christopher Lampo of Christopher's World Grill, and a unique recipe as we head into fall. Christopher, pumpkin soup, something that's probably not something you'd find in a Campbell's can.
No, not in a Campbell's can, but you will find it in Australia. This actually came, this recipe came to me from an Australian friend that I worked with on the private yachts. Now this is actually, what we call it is a butternut squash. But there, in a lot of parts of the world, they call this a pumpkin.
There's got to be a technique involved in the proper way to cut this.
This is the most dangerous part of the thing, so make sure you have a sharp knife. You want to cut off both ends. And you want to cut just above, just where it starts to get straight. You have the neck and the bulb, just above the bulb. So now you have two parts, the neck and the bulb. And now you want to follow this rind. It has a thick rind on it. You want to follow it. Try to follow it down and be very careful with this.
As elementary as this may sound, I see a thin strip of the rind there. Is that something that can go in the soup?
No, it should not go into the soup. It would be very bitter and very chewy. Now you'll find in the bulb end that we open that up and there are some seeds there, so we want to just scrape that out with a spoon. You know, some of the fibers that are left are fine. You just want to make sure you remove all the seeds. The fibers are actually kind of sweet. Now we're not too concerned about the uniformity of this. I mean, we want to get them all about the same size so they cook about the same time. But we're going to puree this soup so it just can be rough cut. We're using about 4 or 5 medium-sized butternut squash, about 5 cups of chopped pumpkin. I'm using an onion and a half.
I notice you're not too concerned about the cut here because again we're going to puree it.
Absolutely. Doing 1 clove of garlic. And we're going to use 1 tomato for this recipe also. We're going to start our soup now with a little bit of butter, using about 2 ounces of butter, melted. About a 1/4 cup. That chopped garlic. Going to add our onions. And our butternut squash. Now we just want to start this simmering without any liquid right now, just until the onions begin to cook and that the squash is able to absorb a little of that butter, cook down a little bit, and then we'll add about 2 cups of stock and just let that simmer.
Okay, Christopher, you said you were going to add the stock later on. What's the reason for doing that?
Well, the stock is, a lot of people, you could use water, but I'm using a chicken broth, chicken stock, that adds much more flavor. So I'm going to add the tomato, and also in this dish, I'm going to add about a quarter of a teaspoon of just Italian seasoning. This just has a mixture of oregano, thyme, rosemary. Okay. We're just going to cook this down until those get tender. Now we're going to add 2 cups of our chicken broth, just so this can start to really cook down and simmer until it's completely done. Now you can buy canned broth. That's not a problem. You don't have to go to any extra trouble. Swanson's or Campbell's has a great chicken broth. And you just want to let that simmer for about 20 minutes. And that basically is a soup. We're just going to puree it and garnish it. And we're going to adjust with salt and pepper, and that will be that. This has been simmering for about 25-30 minutes. You can see that the squash is very tender. The onions are cooked down. The tomatoes are broken down. I'm going to taste this a little bit here. Season with a little salt and pepper. You can use white pepper if you don't like the black specks. Okay. The chicken broth that I'm using did not have any salt in it, so I added a little bit of salt there. All right, now we're going to puree it. This is a very handy tool. This is a kind of, they call it a Swiss mixer or just a hand blender. This one is a Braun, works very good. Now I've turned it off the heat here. I've just turned the flame off there. And I'm just going to do it right on the stove here, and I'm just blending this up. These are very handy tools for all kinds of things. And you can see just in a matter of seconds, it's pureeing the soup. Now I will adjust the consistency with a little more chicken stock if it needs it, but this is looking pretty good right now. I might add another third or half a cup. Now with this soup, I want a little herb crouton, so I'm just going to take a loaf of bread that I had here handy that my wife baked early this morning. And I'm just going to take a piece of round bread like that, and I'm going to brush it with a little butter. Just brushing this bread with a little melted butter. Well, I say a little, that's a lot. That's wonderful. Who cares?
Butter makes everything better.
I'm just going to rub this bread. Just rub this bread with a little rosemary and just a little bit of garlic. This is even better once it's toasted.
And there's enough taste off of the rosemary and garlic to really alter that.
Yes, we just want a subtle flavor. Okay, now once this Once this toast comes out of the toaster like that, I'm just going to rub a little bit of that garlic on it. The toasted bread acts as a little bit of almost like a grater, and releases some of that garlic on there. So that's going to be great. Okay, we're ready to serve this, Mike.
Okay.
And I'm just going to take ladle some of this butternut squash soup in here, just like this. Now this is a large portion.
And this is the all-important presentation part.
And oh, not great. Okay, I garnish with a little bit of cilantro, and then a little bit of parsley.
This is good stuff. It is called pumpkin soup, and it is available on our website. All you do is go to KBTX.com, hit on the food page, and that's where you can access the recipe. Christopher, always a pleasure.
Good to see you, Mike.
And good to see you as well. And thanks for joining us. This has been another segment of Christopher's Kitchen. Again, recipe is available on the website at KBTX.com. Christopher's World Grill and Christopher Lampo. I'm Mike Wright.